Hey, welcome back to the TPK or Bust series, where I evaluate the stats and combat abilities of 5th edition's most iconic lizards. I put them on a handy-dandy tier list between deadly team party killers and the dragons who are just a total bust. Today's TPK or Bust contender happens to be quite the golden oldie. As this golden dragon is the powerful leader of its metallic kin, we can expect to see great things from the adult gold dragon on today's video. Where will it land on the list? What can it do? And what sort of fights will it dominate in? I'll be answering these and many more questions on today's TPK or Bust, the adult gold dragon. A reminder that if you like these kind of videos, please support the channel by bonking that like button and subscribing as well. Doing so lets me keep making these videos and allows me to continue my work on bigger and bigger projects in the future. Now, unlike almost every other dragon, the gold dragon actually studies, evaluates, and controls the magic it wields to an obsessive degree. But not even just controlling it, but they understand it. They really dive into their research and knowledge of the material and magical world around them. Because, like sorcerers, other dragons pull from their draconic bloodline to conjure magic, gold dragons are different because they're more like wizards. They draw from their own pool of magic, sure, but they also study and rely upon the knowledge of the arcane arts to fully utilize and dominate the magical fields of study, which makes them a bit odd to cover on this kind of list, as all of the traditional dragons on this list don't normally have spell slots, or even spells per day, if you're not counting custom rules from the DMG or new books like Vizben's Treasury of Dragons, but even then, they wouldn't have the same number of spells or even the same type of spells that a wizard might have. And that's the question here. We have a dragon that, by lore, will pretty much always have spell slots, but in the monster manual it doesn't. I suppose the same argument can be made for other dragons like the blue dragon or the red dragon, which by theme do get spell-like abilities in their skills and layer actions, but in reality, those aren't technically the spells that the game is talking about. Although this is a problem that could and probably would interfere with the rating, let's focus on the sheet as the main topic for today. First up is the offense category. The gold dragon is boasting some massive DPS right out of the gate. Similar to Little Caesar's pizza, it's hot and it's ready, being a 60-foot cone that comes with a sizzling 66 points of fire damage. A molten hot number that is actually 3 whole points higher than the adult red dragon, which, I don't know if that's anything special at all. It's known for its fire breath. Like, the red dragon is known to be a fire dragon, and the gold dragon does fire better. First, let me say that 66 average damage is a lot of damage in a cone. It's a massive burst of fire that, on a side note, packs enough physical damage to destroy 90% of materials right off the bat. I'm talking walls, armor, doors, flesh, anything in the way, melted, gone, incinerated. It's a tactical observation for dungeon masters who like to think outside of the box here, as the gold dragon could easily melt the ceiling above the party, thus raining down a lava shower on them, and I'm assuming they won't see that one coming. But on top of the powerful breath attack they already show off, they, like every other metallic dragon, have a second breath attack option. The dragon exhales gas in a 60-foot cone. Each creature in that area must succeed on a DC 21 strength saving throw, or have disadvantage on basically all things strength related, for 1 minute. This, in addition to repeat saving throws, makes the gas attack very interesting to me, and I actually had to comb through this ability a few times and even rewrite this entire section of the video just for this breath attack. To be really frank, this ability isn't that powerful to me personally compared to it just spamming its fire attack, but it does provide a non-lethal option for the dragon to continue a fight or just earn the upper hand. Here are a few of my main focuses for the breath attack and what I think about it as a whole. 1. While this disadvantage is fine as a debuff, many times players will eventually, or even just try to, stack advantage in their favor as often as possible. This means that oftentimes they are easily overcoming 1 or even 2 instances of disadvantage turn by turn. Although, to be fair, this should not discourage game masters from using abilities that do impose disadvantage. It is something to be said that the ability only imposes disadvantage. It uses all of the dragon's action economy to impose disadvantage, and that's where I draw the problem from. The fact that this is a powerful, very impactful dragon, spending basically its entire turn just causing disadvantage. Especially if the players can actually gain advantage afterwards with flanking, stealth, incapacitation, spells, class features, and so many more. This is actually further compounded with strength being only a fraction of the avenues that players can choose from to deal damage. Because no character is actually fully backed into a corner with damage options, and can often just choose another weapon or a different spell, or use the help action to sort of ignore or circumvent this debuff pretty easily. Plus, the fact that the DC is actually 21 on strength makes this actually more likely that characters who want to avoid this effect, like barbarians, fighters, druids in wild shape, and others, will actually end up having proficiency in their strength score and have high bonuses to strength, making it far easier for them to make it at all. But again, 21 is a high saving throw on a 17 CR monster. It's not something to scoff at, it doesn't really make sense. But it's so flavorful, it's so well flavored, it's really hard to argue that something like this doesn't make logical sense, but also is just well designed as a whole. It's conflicting, but it's what I feel. However, the goal of the gas is to debilitate the strength of the target. It first attacks strength as the saving throw, rather than constitution, which is the normal. Sure, one failure does actually make it harder to succeed in the future, giving disadvantage on that same save, but I'm not sure how often this will be the best answer the dragon has in its full toolkit. And this ability could have easily been better. It could have been tuned and refined. Something like actually removing the strength score by reducing the strength of the target who fails could be interesting, but that's more of a conversation about 5th edition rather than the dragon itself. Things like swimming, lifting, and pushing are often common strength checks that can generally be solved by having a higher strength score, and by applying a debuff on strength, but then not having a follow-up option for characters to have to use that stat makes this ability kinda silly. I mean, grappling the target and drowning them is a viable option for sure, but how often is a lawful good dragon going to do that? And this won't penalize its overall offensive rating, because this is just a cherry on top. In this example, you can imagine that the Fire Breath attack is a delicious cake. It is just so full of flavor, and it's on theme, and it's powerful, and I don't know why cakes would be powerful, but you get what I'm saying. And the secondary breath attack, the Weakening Breath attack, is more like a stale muffin. You know, you could have a stale muffin, or you could throw it at somebody. It's not that useful or tasty, but it is interesting. But finally, moving on to the multi-attack wombo combo, we have an average damage of 49 for the Claw Bite, quite on par with other CR17 dragons, but surprisingly higher for metallic dragons as a whole. Its legendary options, it gets access to the following, although nothing out of the ordinary. We're talking about a detect, a tail attack, and a wing attack. Same old, same old. Overall, looking at the Gold Dragon's offensive options, top to bottom, and reading more on its lore and personality, I have to say the Gold Dragon is a very intelligent fighter. It takes a more observant role, and strikes only when the iron is hot, by waiting for the perfect window of opportunity. Compared to other dragons at CR17 and even close by, the Gold Dragon feels pretty mellow. Although it can't go without saying that fire is one of the most commonly and easily resisted to or even earned immune damage types, and many classes can easily just make the dexterity saving throw to take half, or even none of that damage. So to me, it looks like the dragon's damage as a whole was bumped up a little because of its CR, but that Fire Breath is the only exception in terms of real damage. So, with all that said, I think a toasty score of 7.9 out of 10 is well earned for the Gold Dragon. A scorching threat to many, with a few extra tricks up its scales, makes the Gold Dragon that much more legendary against any foe. Flying on over to the skill category, the Gold Dragon brings to combat 27 Strength, 14 Dexterity, 25 Constitution, 16 Intelligence, 15 Wisdom, and 24 Charisma. And looking at this in the best light possible and comparing the CR to other dragons, the Gold Dragon just kicks ass in terms of stats. I mean, just looking at it compared to other CR 17 dragons, the Gold Dragon just takes home the medals, man. It's no contest. Plus, the +2 in Dexterity is appreciated for saving throws and skills, and doesn't actually provide any extra bonus to its AC, which is What's the point of giving it an evasion ability and not giving it its earned dexterity bonus to its AC? Its respectably high intelligence and wisdom are worthwhile to mention, but the real powerhouse stats are charisma and strength, making it a menace for useful skills and a nice flat buff to its base damage, as many metallic kin sometimes fail to have equal footing in melee combat compared to their equivalent chromatic rivals. With literal skill bonuses such as Insight, Perception, Persuasion, and Stealth, the Gold Dragon has all it needs to get by in conversation, and, like many other dragons, has a conveniently good stealth that I will never complain about for being that shiny. But its skills are just starting. It has the amphibious feature, making it able to breathe in air and water, and it has the standard movement option list of 40 walk, 40 swim, and 80 fly. So the dragon has just about everything it needs to go most places. And specifically, water movement is one of my personal favorites. It's more niche than burrow for sure, but it's more dangerous to players. And a reminder that its fire breath attack does do half damage under the water, but the gas attack may not even work underwater. I'm not exactly sure how this works, but if you do manage to hit somebody with the gas attack before they go in the water, they'll have disadvantage on swimming. So just remember that one, Game Masters. But if you actually know the answer to whether or not the gas attack works underwater, let me know in the comments down below. I actually just don't know in whole, and I never looked it up, and now I'm editing the video, so yeah. The Gold Dragon embodies a keen eye for smart combat, and takes its layer actions up a notch, with some insanely powerful choices to control the battlefield and open up a game-winning maneuver. The first layer action is the dragon glimpses to the future, so it has advantage on attack rolls, ability checks, and saving throws until initiative count 20 on the next round. So first of all, this ability is very similar to the spell Foresight, granting the target almost identical bonuses. And for those of you not in the know, that's a 9th level spell. It just gets that as a layer action every other round. Like this ability, paired with the idea that seeing into the future is its own flavor win, it's just a terrifying force of power the Gold Dragon has access to. I mean, advantage on nearly all of its options for an entire round? I mean, that's just bonkers. It can get aggressive, it can get defensive, it can take trades, it can do whatever it needs to do in that round, every other round. And while not game-winning on its own, the final nail in the coffin for many players is the second layer action. One creature the target can see within 120 feet must succeed on a DC 15 Charisma saving throw, or be banished to a dream plane, a different plane of existence the dragon has imagined into being. To escape, the creature must use its action to make a Charisma check contested by the dragons. That's right, contested by the dragon's charisma, and if the creature wins, it does escape from the plane. Otherwise, it comes back at the start of initiative round 20, when the effect ends, the creature blah blah blah. But now the saving throw at first is a little low, but think about it, how many players dump charisma and don't have it as a proficient save? So chances are many classes and even characters won't ever be able to make the save more than once. Like, not only that, even if they do manage to come back on the same turn, they have wasted their action to get back. Yeah, they have their movement and their bonus action, but that is a huge debuff, and if they fail twice, they just skip their entire turn. Like, it's insane how good this ability is, and it's a trump card that, hit or miss, it's so powerful. Sure, it's completely worthless on bards who have like plus 12 to their charisma saving throws, but like everybody else, free game, man. Free game. Being realistic, both abilities do have a lot of power behind them, and they remind me that the gold dragon is top dog, dragon, for a reason. Skills make the gold dragon a formidable and surprisingly flexible foe, able to target multiple creatures with different debuffs, it can buff itself, and it flexes some majorly impressive numbers in its stats. And I truly believe a 10 out of 10 for skills is way more than enough to prove the gold dragon's worth, and I would give it an 11 if I could. And to recap, its skills and stats are great. Those layer actions really put the dragon above and beyond any comparison. Not to mention, the combat plans a gold dragon will have in its own lair, just home field advantage, for the gold dragon specifically, makes it insanely hard to fight. Speaking of fighting this thing, for defensive tools, we start by talking about the style of the gold dragon, and why its score is going to be so in flux. The gold dragon studies magic heavily, and its fighting style is patient, observant, and defensive. Using spells to soften and confuse its opponent, it probes for weaknesses, unleashing powerful spells to cripple a foe's defenses before landing the final blow. Although the sheet tries to represent this well, with OP layer actions, a powerful skill set, and many more, it is just sadly not able to do so with the way 5th edition has set up the base core dragons. Because 5th edition was designed to streamline issues and complicated interactions between abilities and spells to make the game more digestible, and allows for easier homebrew or edits at any table of any level. And the simplicity of boiling down the flavor of many dragons to a more brutish archetype makes many dragons like the gold dragon suffer immensely. And yes, gem dragons and other strange dragons in recent publishings do have a small hotfix to address this. They normally have spells by base, and many other fancy abilities that I really like. Please keep doing that, Wizards, it's really nice. Just the OG dragons really miss out on many of the features, skills, spells, and general awe and wonder many dragons of legend portray. And I feel like the stats and OP layer actions are the writer's way of doing too many things at once, sort of overcompensating for the lack of flavor in the sheet. It's lacking in spells in some lower options that really hurt the dragon's design far more than the others I've covered on this list. An example is actually the change shape ability. As written on the sheet, it's basically identical to every other change shape feature, except by lower. The gold dragon can fly in any form it chooses, even a form without wings. That's not mentioned on the monster manual. You can thank that convenient tidbit of information from Mr. Rex. He does some fantastic lore videos on many monsters of D&D 5e. You should definitely go check him out. In addition, the gold dragon studies magic. It practices the arcane art to such a degree that it is actually insulting to me that it doesn't have a single spell to its name. Yes, again, it has a 9th level feature that it casts every other turn. That's not the same thing as spellcasting, man. It's like, you bought your spells from wish.com. Other issues with dragons in 5th edition settings can normally be overlooked. Again, I mentioned that the blue dragon in my blue dragon video, not having its own spells was sad, but not detrimental, since using the sorcerer origin extra rules for most dragons will fix that lack of flavor. And it's mechanical, it's right there in the rules, you can actually do it very easily, but it doesn't work for the gold dragon in the same way. It just can't work that way. There isn't enough reach in that ability or representation for its true power. Now, I'm not saying that you should run or have to run or even maybe want to run a gold dragon this way. I'm just suggesting that there's more to this dragon than meets the eye. Haha, Transformers reference. Go watch the new movie, by the way. The new Transformers movie is, like, actually gas. And all I want to do here is point out the flaws in the monster sheet and explain why its rating is going to be drastically different from the sheet to the script. Whew! Alright, so to get along with the defensive segment, finally, and what I will further extrapolate later in the flavor segment, we're gonna just go ahead and talk about the Gold Dragon off of the actual sheet, not its implied features. Again, it's not really fair to the other dragons to give this dragon all of its implied features and implied abilities and not do it to the others. I did make a small exception with the Elder Brain Dragon because it doesn't make any logical sense for it not to have the Mind Flayer colony with it. But again, I only rated it like that because, well, it seemed like super logical. Like, there's no real other way for you to have a Elder Brain Dragon and not have a Mind Flayer colony. It doesn't really make sense. But anyways, I do try to keep the influence from implied power out of these videos and just keep that part of the conversation towards the flavor segment of every video. With that said, the Gold Dragon boasts a about average HP pool of 256 and an upsetting AC of 19, because like I've said before, many dragons have a 19 AC and have normally 0 or +1 dexterity, and the Gold Dragon having a 14 and not having an increased AC really irks me. I don't know why. Its immunity to fire is actually really big. Many spells and abilities and magical items use fire damage. It's a convenient damage type to be immune to, and counts for a little extra here. Its frightful presence is actually worth mentioning because the saving throw is 21 wisdom, which you can bet your players will at least have one failure, if not more, on the entrance of this grand dragon. Although its swim speed is useful, it provides little defensive advantage most of the time compared to its other movement options. It shouldn't be disregarded because forcing disadvantage or going just out of reach for many attacks by using the water is convenient. I feel like when taking into account its swim speed without its magic, the swim speed feels more like an escape option more than anything else, sadly. Its fire breath does half, it will probably also not want to be in melee combat under the water as often, and it would just have all of the advantages of that in the air, but better. Because without spells, you have to pick your brawls and breath attack angles far more aggressively to make sure the dragon doesn't actually fall behind in damage without a way to heal itself. Overall, the Gold Dragon's defensive options on the sheet allow it to soak a couple more hits than normal, but honestly, without considering its layer actions or legendary actions specifically, it feels pretty identical to many other dragons. For the layer action options applying plenty of space and time, and for a little bit thicker HP pool, a tactical mind that makes anybody jealous, I think a 7.5 out of 10 is very generous. But considering its battle strategy and access to powerful skills, I can't imagine it's easy to catch the Gold Dragon lacking. Unlike many other dragons, catching a Gold Dragon by surprise is going to be very difficult. And I would love to hear what you think about this rating in the comments, this one specifically, because dragons like this one do pose a bit of a conundrum in terms of my opinion of what I think is a fair score. I could miss a detail, or an opinion, or even an option that can drastically affect the score after all. But as far as I've researched, and as far as I understand about Gold Dragons, a 7.5 is my official stance on defense. Last up is the flavor of the Gold Dragon, and as I said earlier, the Gold Dragon, by design, should be this massively intelligent, spell-slinging, careful combatant, with great wisdom, a penchant for contemplating philosophy, and whiskers to clean their teeth while they study the arcane. This dragon is dripping with flavor. But I'll stress again, these videos take the sheet as presented, and hypothesize improvements and mechanical fixes you should try on your own game. To be frank, if you're using the Gold Dragon, I fully suggest you change the entire sheet. Make the dragon more magical, give it more intelligence and wisdom, maybe trim strength and charisma a little bit, sure. Reduce that HP pool a bit and increase the AC by that much-deserved 1. For God's sake, just give it its AC, please. It has the 14 dexterity, just give it. And, not to mention, speaking of things it deserves, give it its spell list. Like, it studies every day for those spells, man. Do not take a boy's spell away when he studies all night and day. But I would also bump the CR up by at least 2 if you're gonna do this. Because if you make any changes to the Gold Dragon in a positive manner by buffing it, the Gold Dragon already hits well above its weight class for CR17. And we'll talk about that more when I get to the Red Dragon. But, yeah, the Gold Dragon's really, really strong for CR17, and I would highly recommend that you talk to other game masters and maybe even other players before you actually go tinkering with the Gold Dragon. It seems to be a very slippery slope for buffing or debuffing the Gold Dragon. But I would still highly recommend doing so. It seems like one of those dragons where just a little bit of extra love and TLC would go a very long way of making this a more memorable encounter. For flavor, though, the Gold Dragon easily takes home the gold medal, in my heart, with a 8.5 out of 10. Because its flavor, both on sheet and in implication, is just succulent. And yes, I don't care that 5th edition slashed up the Gold Dragon's flavor by technicality, because we all know what the Gold Dragon represents, what it's supposed to be doing, we all see the potential, and I hope you use this as a sort of motivation to actually make the Gold Dragon better, because for God's sake, somebody should do it justice and buff up those abilities in CR to make this dragon worth its name. It's still a crazy powerful dragon on paper, especially for its CR, but it's not the dragon I was hoping for when making this video. And to finally wrap up this entire video, the Gold Dragon has really been a curveball. It's so different than what I would have imagined, and its powerful traits and attacks, alongside a bit less magic than I wanted to read about, made the dragon interesting and a little disappointing. Overall, the Gold Dragon scores an honorable 8.5 out of 10, putting the dragon nearly all the way to the top of the TPK or Bust list. And to be honest, it's pretty unsurprising all things considered. It's a Gold Dragon, I mean, it brings a fresh take on combat tactics for many other dragons. It slams enemies with weird effects, and completely skips unlucky players' turns after all. All of this while its crazy high stats more than make up for any specific weakness or feature it's lacking in. Overall, its combat expertise is quite impressive. Honestly, again, the Gold Dragon is something that needs a heavy change in my opinion before you use it. I would fully recommend reading information and watching videos about other dragons, and getting a feel for how you want to represent them, and change those dragons based on that thought. Because books like Fizbin's Treasury of Dragons, the Game Master's Book of Legendary Dragons, and any dragon from Kobold Press is a great example of dragons with unique traits, perks, and skills to keep them fresh, but to also keep them fair. Well, I say fair, but I also like bullying my players in combat, so take that as you will. But we are done here for today. Go check out my other videos and catch me live over at twitch.tv/ThatTurtleGM. I hope you come by again and keep your fingers crossed for the next video. This one was a fun one to write about, and it made me appreciate that the Forgotten Realms has some powerful protectors watching over it. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.